So when we have the conversation of nutrition, we want to talk about the overarching consumption of energy, the total consumption of energy, which is your calories. So I've covered calories in a separate video. Now we want to move on to the second tier as we start to categorize nutrition into its three macronutrients. Now your macronutrients is, as I said, the second tier. So once we've had the conversation of total consumption of energy, we want to understand what the various types of foods are and the major groups and what the application of the various food groups is. So the three macronutrients, how we break it down, are protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Now, most people have heard of these, but they don't understand what they do. Therefore, it's difficult to really have an understanding and place a lot of value in the application of these macronutrients. But I think if we want to maintain a really healthy relationship with food and a really good perception of food and a really good idea of the value, we need to increase our knowledge and essentially really understand the benefits, and it'll ultimately help us set up our diet in order to produce certain desired outcomes as well. So, protein is essentially the building blocks of physical tissue. Now, the vast majority of the body, in its physical sense, is made up of proteins. So when we consume proteins, the goal of said proteins is to build, replenish, recover physical tissues. That's protein. A lot of people associate that with just muscle tissue, but that can be hair, nails, skin, the lot. Okay, so that's protein. On the other hand, we have got carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates, unlike protein and fats, are considered non-essential. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But essentially, carbohydrates are your body's more preferred, more immediate source of energy. Energy in the literal sense of producing movement and having the sense of energy. Now, on the other hand, we've got dietary fats. Now, a lot of people associate the term dietary fats with the fat that's on your body. Obviously, it's the same word. So people assume that dietary fats, and when you consume them, will get turned into body fat or immediately transported to your body fat storage, which is not the case. Fats and dietary fats have some of the best, most appreciable application in the body in that they keep you healthy. In the most simplest description possible, they keep you healthy. Your major organs, your heart, and all the likes of that sort of stuff really rely quite heavily on fats in order to keep things ticking. Now, not only that, but there's major parts of the body that are really, really important that are literally made up of fats. Part of your nervous system is literally made up of fat. So when we look at fats, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a really, really beneficial, very, very essential part of your nutrition. So that's the three macronutrients and kind of what they do. Now, all three have so many applications, and there can be some crossover in the way that your body utilizes the three macronutrients after they get consumed in various contexts, but fundamentally that's what they do. Protein is the building blocks of physical tissue, carbohydrates is energy, fat is nourishment and support of essential major organs, and a number of other things in the body as well. So, as I said, carbohydrates are considered non-essential. Fats and protein are considered essential, and that's because your body can actually create its own carbohydrates. It can create its own glucose. After we consume carbohydrates, it gets broken down into glucose. Your body can make its own glucose if it's in a situation where it has none essentially, whereas fats and protein have to be consumed through food. Therefore, we call them essential and we call carbohydrates non-essential. So that is the three macronutrients. Hopefully they give you a little bit of an insight as to what they do. Now, for a little bit more of a description as to how we would want to set this up, my recommendation for most people is to have a balance between all three across all meals. Now, what you'll typically find is if you're somebody who works out and you want to have a bit of a surge of energy, then, for example, going back to carbohydrates, as I explained, it's your body's more immediately preferred source of energy. If you were to time a decent helping of carbohydrates around your workout window, then you would notice that your energy and your performance in said training session would be much better. In terms of protein, there's a lot of studies to show that if we evenly spread out and distribute protein consumption across the day, we really maximize our outcomes of muscle protein synthesis, which is the process in which your body turns protein into muscle. So when I'm talking about these things, and you can ask me questions directly if you're not sure, setting your nutrition up so that you are not just trying to hit how many calories you're supposed to hit and hit the macros you're supposed to hit, actually setting it up so that there's certain macronutrients being consumed at certain times of the day in order to produce certain outcomes can really boost performance, recovery, and then also muscle growth and various desired outcomes as well. Now, that is very person dependent, and I don't have time to go over all the different examples as there would be too many to count. So if you want any further advice, there's a little bit more specifically pertains to your circumstance and your desired outcome. All you need to do is drop me a message. But hopefully this has given you a good insight. And as I said, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch.